Pay me, pay me, pay me my silver now. Pay me or go to jail. Pay me my silver now.
Good morning, Bix Weir, roadroad.com with your morning horn disease, your sip of chaga coffee. FDIC is not talking. Well, FDIC, after the close of business last night, today is the 29th, I believe. Yep, 29th. Declared that they had a bank failure. I think this is the 5th. Dream Bank, National Associates of Syracuse, Kansas, assumes all the deposits of Heartland Tri-State Bank of Elkhart, Kansas. Heartland Tri-State Bank of Elkhart, Kansas was closed today by the Kansas Office of the State Bank Commissioner, which appointed the FDIC Insurance Corporation as the receiver to protect depositors. The FDIC entered into a purchase and assumption agreement with Dream First Bank, National Association of Syracuse, to assume all the deposits of Heartland Tri-State Bank. Getting to the nuts and bolts of this, as of March 31st, Heartland Tri-State Bank had approximately, this is important, they had approximately $139 million in total assets, which is not a big bank. Decent, but not big. And $130 million in total deposits. So they got $130 million in deposits, $139 million in assets. In addition to assuming all of the deposits, Dream First Bank National Association agreed to purchase essentially all of the failed banked assets. Now, it doesn't say how much they bought it for. This is the problem. You can assume they bought it for something less than the asset value or the deposit value, because why else would the bank be closing up unless something is wrong? Here's the interesting part. The FDIC and Dream Bank are also entering into a commercial shared loss agreement on the loans it purchased from the former Heartland Bank. The FDIC receiver and Dream First Bank National Association will share the losses and potential recoveries of the loans covered by the shared loss agreement, which is projected to maximize recoveries on the assets by keeping them in the private sector. But listen to the last statement. The FDIC estimates that the cost to the DIF, the Deposit Insurance Fund, will be $54 million. Compared to other alternatives, Dream Bank National Association's acquisition was the least costly. You have a bank with total assets of $139 million and $130 million in total deposits, and you're having to bail out $54 million. That's fairly bankrupt. I mean, that is a massive, that's 40%. And to put this in the context, I think Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, and the other bank, it was like $300 million at the time, or $300 billion. And they only needed to pay $20 billion, so less than 7%. This is 40%. 40% of these assets are underwater that the FDIC is going to have to take a hit. Now, the question that goes unanswered here is, what about the uninsured depositors? Each individual and each company only has $250,000 worth of FDIC insurance, unless they do some squirty things with beneficiaries and things like that. They're not even telling us how many of these are uninsured depositors. Did the FDIC bail out the uninsured depositors as well? It looks like they did. If you look at here's the frequently asked questions. Is my money safe? This is on the FDIC website talking about this specific Heartland Tri-Bank. On July 28th, Heartland Tri-Bank was closed by the Office of the State Commissioner of Kansas City, blah, blah, blah. I read all that. First question, is my money safe? Yes. No one lost any money on deposit as a result of the closure of this bank. All deposits, regardless of the dollar amount, were transferred to Dream First Bank. So the FDIC didn't bail out any depositors. They transferred all the depositors over to the Dream Bank, And then they gave him a guarantee for 1/3 or 40% of what the supposedly Heartland Bank had. How is that not bailing out the unsecured depositors? They're just doing it on the sly in through the back door. They bailed out unsecured depositors. I guarantee you there were quite a few unsecured depositors at Heartland Bank. But the way they're bailing it out, so that they're not saying, yeah, we bailed out uninsured depositors, they instantly got someone else to buy it, and then they guaranteed them 1/3 of their total deposits or total assets. That, my friends, is bailing out uninsured depositors. FDIC knows this is a joke. They warned everybody about this. So here we are. This year, this would be the fifth bank, I think. Let's see. Fourth bank. We have Silicon Valley. Well, there was another bank just recently that got bought out by another bank, but the FDIC wasn't involved in that, so I wouldn't call it a failed bank. Silicon Valley, SVB, Signature Bank, Republic Bank, and Triland. Now, just Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, that was the $20 billion hit to the FDIC. They're going to try to build that back to the other big banks, who are also losing deposits, by the way. The whole thing, all the regional bank deposits are going to go to the big banks. That is not what's happening. The big banks are also losing deposits. That was just a spin they had at the beginning of the year. So again, you go to roadtoroad.com, right on the public road page, there's end of 22 troubled bank list. Now, Heartland was not on this list. They didn't show massive amounts of underwater Tier 1 capital. Signature Bank was. This is the end of last year. Signature Bank, SVB, and First Republic were all there. But Heartland was not. How many more banks are going to be dropping like flies in the next month or two? I didn't think this would happen till come on the end of August, when the FDIC has to declare how many assets are underwater, and I think it's massive. So this is just the beginning, and notice they did it on a Friday. Notice how they hid what happened to the uninsured depositors. They hid it by transferring it all to a different bank and then guaranteeing that bank a random amount, 54 million, shared loss agreement. That part you don't get to see. So again, we have come into the season of bank failure. If you have money in your bank, you're pretty much hoping and praying. If you have anything over 250 and you haven't secured it with adding beneficiaries, and be careful with that. You have to add enough beneficiaries. If you just add one beneficiary, you still have $250,000 worth of insurance. It's just your beneficiary has it. You don't. If you add two, you have $500,000 in coverage, and 4 and 5, you have $1 million, $2 million, and so on. Some banks aren't allowing you to do that, and some banks will try to take it off after the fact. You'll go in there, the banker will, yeah, you can add beneficiaries, no big deal. It is a big deal. It's a massive deal, because that each beneficiary gets $250,000 of insurance. Make sure your beneficiaries are willing to give you the money back after they get it. So yes, it is a nightmare scenario for the banks. The FDIC even told us about this at the end of their video presentation in, May. They said, well, second quarter is not going to be bad because all the U.S. bonds, the yield had gone down, so the underlying bond is worth more, and it got him out of a lot of trouble. But now the yields are blowing through all-time highs of, like, I think the 1-year Treasury yield is at 20-year all-time highs, which means the value of that asset is going down to zip. Crazy stuff, huh? Here's how it's spun in the mainstream. Dream First Bank acquires Heartland Tri-State Bank. Acquired by Dream First. So this is the entity that the FDIC says, we have nothing to do with it. It's the State Bank Commissioner of Kansas that shut this bank down, not the FDIC. We'll guarantee Dream Bank, but we'll have nothing to do with Heartland Tri-State Bank, which was closed by Timothy Kemp, the Deputy Bank Commissioner of Kansas. And here's his statement. On July 23rd, Heartland Bank was acquired by Dream First Bank. The bank will reopen as Dream First Bank on July 31st, 2023, on Monday. Depositors of Heartland will automatically become depositors of First Dream Bank. Over the weekend, customers of Heartland can access their funds by writing checks or using ATM cards. Checks drawn on the bank will continue to be processed. Loan customers should continue to make payments as usual. Of course, loan customers should continue to make payments. Based on an ongoing review by the state bank commissioner, Bank Commissioner David Huron determined that Heartland Tri-State Bank was insolvent. Therefore, the commissioner took charge of the properties, blah, 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 assets on the bank on the 28th. The commissioner appointed the FDIC to act as the receiver. Heartland State Bank became insolvent due to an isolated event. So you have a bank that's got $139 million of assets, and one isolated event caused it to go belly up to the tune of $54 million bailout, 40% from the FDIC. How could this be one isolated event? Was it a single depositor that went belly up? Over time, we'll figure this out. We'll find out. But right now, it's still a mystery. Overall, the Kansas banking industry is unaffected by the event, and Kansas Bank remains strong. Bullshit. No bank remains strong anymore. So they're claiming it was an isolated incident. Now, you're a bank. You have $130 million in deposits. Was it just one entity that had a deposit of $54 million? Was it one loan that had this exposure of $54 million that the FDIC had to come cover? What was the isolated event such that the FDIC had to cover 40% of the value, supposed value of this bank? So crazy. FDIC is just, they're terrible at covering things up. They're liars, they're cheaters. We saw them. If you followed the Road to Ruta, we aired the FDIC meeting where they talked about all the banks that are about to fail and how we can't allow anything over the insured deposit amount. All the uninsured deposits have to fail. And they're talking about, well, if people knew that, they'd take money out of the bank, and that would cause the failure. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life is happening right now. Do you have money in your bank? You won't. You won't have access to it. The question is, where's the FDIC? So the FDIC is what, $120 billion right now? And they insure $8 trillion, something to that effect. If you count derivatives, it's infinity. Your FDIC insurance is not going to help you on the fiat money side. Now, if the banks crash, the FDIC says, okay, we're going to reallocate money, or the Treasury says we're going to reallocate money to the people of the United States because the system fell apart. Will your FDIC insurance kick off then? Will the new money, whatever it happens to be, I think it'll be gold and silver, be valued in some way? Will you get new money? I don't know. It's an insane world we're living in, and a more insane world that we're moving into. Very interesting here. By the way, Wall Street Journal is not covering Heartland Tri-State Bank. They haven't said a word about it. The financial media is on lockdown about this. You're not allowed to talk about it because you'd ask the obvious question. Were uninsured depositors made whole? And the answer here is yes, they were, but they did it backdoor by transferring everybody to a different bank, the Dream Bank. What a dream. And then guaranteeing that having an agreement with the Dream Bank that they're not going to lose $54 million. That's a backdoor bailout, like usual. Anyway, but here's more news. There was plenty of news about where is it? It's right here. FDIC agencies request comment on proposed rules to strengthen capital requirements for large banks. This is the end game for the large banks. They're saying you need, I think it was 16% more Tier 1 capital, which is crazy. That's a huge amount for these banks. It still won't help them, but I'm looking at this saying, hey, it talks about Basel III, which when Basel III moves gold into the tier one asset category for banks. Andy Schekman's been talking about this for a very long time. And they talk about it. The changes would implement the final components of Basel III agreement, known as the Basel III Endgame. So if you've seen all these banks buying gold on the COMEX and taking delivery, that's what they're doing. They're building their tier one capital in gold because it is now a tier one asset. And especially with the FDIC saying, oh, Mr. Bank, by the way, you have to increase your tier one assets by, I think it's down here somewhere. It's like right here, aggregate of 16% tier one capital. That's a huge amount. I don't know when this goes. They're transitioning the framework July 2025, full compliance by 2028. So yes, all that gold that you see going out of the COMEX and all these banks that are taking delivery of gold, that's all to use as tier one capital in the new system. It's crazy, huh? Anyway, back to this. Turns out the FDIC is pissed off because all the big banks are manipulating deposit data. So when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank went down, the FDIC said, we'll bail out all these banks, but the big banks are going to have to pay a special assessment based on their deposits. So all the banks are now refiling their end-of-year deposits and saying, no, we didn't have this many deposits. We had hell of a lot less. And Bank of America is one that did it, and they went from, let's see. The largest bank revision was by Bank of America. In a May 5th filing, now remember, this is after the FDIC said, we're going to add a special assessment to you banks based on your deposits. Bank of America said its uninsured deposits were $784 billion as of December 31st, which was $125 billion or 14% less than it originally reported. So these banks are saying, no, we had to revisit our classification of what an uninsured deposit is. So we have less uninsured deposits. That means we have to pay 14% less of a fine. And the fine is pretty big. FDIC said it would impose a special assessment on banks with more than $5 billion in total assets to cover $15.8 billion that it costs to guarantee uninsured deposits at Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank. So yeah, all of a sudden the banks are saying, no, don't look at me. I don't have any deposits. This is such a con game, a shell game. Get your money out of the banks is the obvious answer. I highly recommend physical silver in your own possession. If you don't have any cryptos yet, just get the silver first. Silver is going to run first. Silver is going to run like a banshee. Silver's been price suppressed for 170 years. It's not going to be a little, it went up to $50 and they slam it back down to $20. It's going to go $30, $50, $100, $300, $600, and then up from there. Watch the silver gold ratio. Right now it's 80-1. If you have gold, go swap it for 80 ounces of silver. And then you could get your gold back 10 times that when it goes 8-1 or 7-1. Right now, coming out of the ground, it should be 3-1. Because it's coming out of the ground at 7-1, but 60% of that's getting used in industrial. So it should be around 3-1, which will put silver at, $600. That's the Cliff High number, and Penny Kelly saw that number too. And everybody's saying $600 silver. That's just as it's coming out of the ground. If you want to talk about above ground available silver versus gold, remember all the gold's been stored away for years. It's about 1-1, 6 billion ounces of each. And if you really want to go down that path, start learning about all the secret gold mines and gold stashes there are all around the world. Read Peggy and Sterling Seagrave's book, Gold Warriors. Go to the Road to Ruta information about the gold in the Grand Canyon. Listen to my debate with Steve Santangelo about gold in the Grand Canyon. I give you all the facts, and there's massive amount of facts. There's massive amount of gold along the Colorado River. There's even more secret gold that I didn't even need to go there. But yeah, in Chocolate Mountain in California that Dianne Feinstein locked up back in the 90s. Huge scuttlebutt about all the gold that was there, and now it's a military base and you're not allowed to go there. So absolutely get as much silver as you can, as August and September will be the largest bank failures in history. Bigger than the Great Depression, bigger than 2008, bigger than everything. It's the mothership is going to happen. And the FDIC will literally do anything they can to hide what's going on. Don't believe them. They just bailed out uninsured depositors at Heartland Tri-State Bank. More information, go to roadtoroot.com, join the private road membership, and we will send you that coin. The Ruta Lives coin, hand-painted, really cool coin. Check it out. This is Bix. I'll talk to you later.